This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, right in the midst of harvest season, there's something else important in the days ahead, that FFA convention. Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the broadcast. Mr. Pearson, I understand when you were on the road the other day, you saw some members maybe headed toward Indiana's capital city.
I'm pretty sure a number of school district vans from rural districts all headed east. Max, I got to assume that's where they're headed.
It's convention time for the National FFA organization, to be sure. I was reminded the other day when I saw this Twitter photograph. My friend Mike Wilson in Southeast Illinois posted this photograph of his grandson, Trenton Potts. And Grandpa Mike Wilson said, "Nothing looks as good as a brand new FFA jacket. Family tradition." And Trenton's parents were in FFA. His granddad, Mike Wilson, respected crop consultant, was in FFA too. A lot of folks carry that through many generations.
They certainly do, Max.
Farmer mental health is a concern. We talk about that often, and in the next few weeks, we'll share with you some additional insight on that subject. FMC has a push now to try to improve farmer mental health and to help those of us who may have to talk to others about it. Lisa Homer is with FMC, and visiting with her a few days ago, I asked her about this recognition at the company for which she works, why they're moving this direction.
Safety is a huge issue at FMC. When we do town hall meetings or when we get together as a team, the first statistic we share is our safety record before we even talk about financials. And so that is something that is always top of mind at FMC. And for me, it started to expand outside of physical safety and into the mental health piece of it, and all of those things that come together from a safety perspective when you're keeping your mind as healthy and as safe as you are with your physical being.
You're talking about your workforce at FMC, your people,
yes.
And the need to keep them safe.
Correct. Their motto is that you go home at the end of the day the way you showed up. So, yeah. And so that was a big part of how I knew the company would be on board. For me personally, it's I've been around a lot of people who have mental health issues, and it's so hard to say mental health because you immediately get this idea, but it's something bigger than what it is. But it can be as simple as depression or ADHD. So 2 years, actually right before COVID, I was officially diagnosed, ADHD and depression. And when I broke my ankle, I sent pictures to everybody. Look what happened. But the minute I got this diagnosis, it was like, I can't let anybody find that out. I don't want to tell. And it's ridiculous. You can't help it any more than you can help the broken bone. So I figured the best way for me to handle it was to make sure the people around me knew it and knew how to handle it.
And in a rural community, everyone is so close, everyone is so guarded because of that feeling of being looked at differently. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the agriculture community, you get a twofer, right? You get people who are uncomfortable asking for help for anything, because you were brought up to be able to manage it. You help other people, but you certainly don't ask for help. And then you add on top of that the stigma that can come from mental health and what people think about it. It just makes it doubly hard for somebody in that arena to ask for help. But it also makes it hard for the people who could see somebody who they feel like they need to offer the help, and you're not sure how to do that because is this person going to be open to responding to that? So I think it creates a much bigger stigma, both for the people who are experiencing the issues and those who are watching somebody suffer.
So at FMC, have you worked with some associations here to try to bring this to the fore for the ag community?
Absolutely. It's been wonderful working with, we've talked with the American Soybean Association, and they have a great program that they use that lists the numbers that are available in the different states. We've talked with National Corn Growers, Rural Mines, NOG. I mean, all of these people, when we went out and said, we want to break the stigma, make it okay to have the conversation, and help people find the resources, every single one of them had a story of, oh my God, so-and-so will be on board with this because he experienced this or she went through this. And it's It's just, I think people are ready to break the silence and just blow it open.
One word comes to mind as I'm talking to you and listening to you is the word hope, offering some hope out there, that there are folks available to provide some answers, that it isn't necessarily something that you can't address.
Right. And it doesn't have to be specifically about somebody who was, that you save a life, or that somebody doesn't make a very tragic choice because they think they don't have another option, although that's wonderful. It's about the idea of living with depression or any of those other things that can weigh you down. And just, I want somebody to understand you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to live that way. And the people who do get help and the people who make that change or have that conversation and describe it as a weight has been lifted, that's enough. That's the important part, is that you don't have to feel this way. It's very easy to feel alone, even in a crowd of people. And so you're not by yourself. There are people that care about you. And just go find them. Go find them and let them know that you just need to talk, whatever you need. So, yeah, hope's a good word.
We appreciate Lisa sharing with us her personal story. Now take a look. There is this special Farm Futures issue. Here's a barcode. If you don't get Farm Futures at your farm, or if you're not on the farm, maybe you're in the fertilizer business, some other line of work, this barcode will take you to that special issue made possible by FMC, the series Cultivating Mental Health.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Walter Kunish, Senior Vice President at HTS Commodities. And Walter, there's a lot of fundamental things changing on the ground with harvest in play. There's also a lot of factors on the international scene. Can you talk a little bit about the value of the U.S. dollar here recently?
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me back. When we look at the fundamental setup of U.S. agriculture right now, focusing on whether it's corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, we're seeing a lot of fundamental strength, but also fundamental weakness. And right now, the strength of the U.S. dollar compared to other primary commodity exporting countries like the Brazilian real, Argentine peso, the euro, also to Canadian dollar, is creating that strength of the U.S. dollar is creating headwinds. It's slowing down U.S. exports, it's backing up basis, and it's creating what we think is a negative, both short and medium picture for U.S. agriculture.
In the short term, Walter, what is your timeline for that? Is this going to be a headwind all winter?
You know, it very well could be. Without getting into the nuances of what's driving U.S. dollar strength, we are looking at basically a strong economy compared to the rest of the world, and also too a strong interest rate program. And we are seeing that the Fed, while raising interest rates compared to other countries, we think that can last. And our short-term picture being looking out over the next 3 to 6 months, so maybe looking out up to the beginning of March, right around the time for harvest season in the Southern Hemisphere, that dollar strength could present headwinds for U.S. exports.
Walter, you mentioned South America there. We've seen Brazilian farmers get into the field. They're anticipating a very large crop this year. What's your take on the growing situation in South America?
Well, sitting here at the end of October, it's just beginning to be winter here, kind of early spring down there. Everything that we're seeing, all the data points that are kind of coming into the marketplace are showing what should be a very promising harvest or 22-23 crop outlook for Brazil and Argentina, meaning that it looks like a lot of agronomists are pointing to the gradual end of La Nina cycle, which means a more average precipitation, average temperatures. And what the USDA and other private entities are forecasting is a possibility of a record corn and soybean program, production and exports down in the Southern Hemisphere, which, again, can present challenges for the U.S.
It can indeed. And Walter, have those exports already kicked off out of Brazil?
There's been a lot of export buying, not only of old crop, but also forward booking of new crop through some of our commercial contacts in the Southern Hemisphere. We are seeing kind of the global end user, whether it's feed grains, soybean derivatives out of Argentina, or even China. There's been China buying, as they've attempted to diversify their agricultural supply chain. They've also been making purchases from China. So again, I think when we look at strength of the U.S. dollar, improving weather conditions in the Southern Hemisphere, again, we're looking for those challenges to not only U.S. agricultural exports, but prices as well, whether it's futures prices and also cash.
Walter, do you expect to see investment money moving back into the commodity space?
That's actually a really great question. And I know that for a long time, there's been commodities have been a hedge against inflation. As some commodities, agricultural commodities like corn, soybean, wheat, can help, by storing those, you can help hedge against inflation. And what we're seeing right now is not necessarily a return of hedge funds or asset managers into the commodity space. When we looked at both the Bloomberg Commodity Index as well as the S&P GSCI commodity indices compared to inflation, we're really not seeing the type of buying into commodities that we've seen in the past. While there's a fundamental story, we just don't see that type of asset flows helping to support agricultural commodity prices.
All right, we'll be back for more with Walter Kunish from HTS Commodities. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're talking markets this week with Walter Kunish of HTS Commodities. And Walter, we talked about the global situation there in the last segment. I want to talk to you about the trends up close. In the corn market right now, harvest pressure is on. Do you expect to see a dip here over the next 30 days?
That's hard to see. Naturally and seasonally, there is some pressure in both the cash markets as well as the future markets as harvest progresses and then kind of harvest winds down. But what's really interesting right now is the pressure on basis that we're seeing resulting from the dryness on the Mississippi River.
That is huge, Walter. That is a huge topic of conversation. It's impacting the corn market, also impacting the soybean market, I would anticipate. What are you watching to measure these impacts?
Well, what we're doing is we're looking at some of the data that the CME provides as well as other basis data. And while basis can be impacted by numerous variables, it can be local supply and demand, it can be local supply pressures. But what we're really looking at right now, it's kind of those midstream storage levels, the midstream stocks reported by the CBOT. In particular, what we're seeing is one of the sharpest increases in stocks, registered deliverable corn stocks and soybean stocks in St. Louis. And for us, that is a clear indication that the sharp rise is clearly a result of reduced downstream demand, which we believe is pressuring upstream prices and forcing those prices down.
And Walter, this is going to be a challenge all winter long, isn't it, for producers, particularly farther upstream?
It certainly is. And, the Army Corps of Engineers always seems to do their best and try to resolve these situations. But, acute dryness in portions of the upper Midwest and portions of the Western Corn Belt, we're not seeing a real material amount of precipitation in either the Eastern Corn Belt or the Western Corn Belt, leads us to believe that despite the best intentions of the Army Corps of Engineers, we do see perhaps a trickle in below average export volumes or barge volumes headed down to the Gulf Coast.
With all that being the case, looking over at the wheat market, Walter, does that chance of weaker basis drive more wheat into the feeding system?
We believe that wheat is for storing at this point. And when in certain portions of the Eastern Corn Belt, we know that there are going to be robust and ample corn supplies for feeding. In the Western Corn Belt, we know that corn supplies are acutely tighter. Basis is tighter for corn, but it's also tight for wheat. And while we are seeing incremental wheat feeding in certain places, we do believe that the data that we're seeing is that wheat feeding is it's a very localized effort. It's not a national trend. So again, wheat feeding, I don't believe we could really feed our way out of a wheat problem.
All right, all right. We'll be watching there. A lot of stocks of wheat left on hand. We've been speaking with Walter Kunish, Senior Vice President at HTS Commodities.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Farmers are using technology in lots of ways on their farm, including this time of year, putting up some beautiful pictures on social media with their drones. If you want to get into the drone game, Chad's got an update.
Like many technology, drones are always advancing. And on this week's tech segment, we're going to talk about a great entry-level drone. I got it from Flying Ag. It's the DJI Mini 3. Now you can see its compact size. This thing is small. It's actually smaller and lighter than a Coke can at 250 grams, actually a little less than that. But you can see the performance here is pretty outstanding. This is the third generation of this drone, and the enhancements come to longer battery life, 34 minutes with a standard battery, and a better sensor, a 48 megapixel still sensor, and you can even record up to 4K, and as you can see right here, it looks great. I'm screen recording my iPhone there just to give you that simulation of what it looks like when you'll be running it. Now, I can tell you this, for a starter drone, this thing is great. It does have one major downfall. You can't do any mapping with that, which quite honestly, we've never been able to at these lower price point drones. This full package, I believe, is right around $1,200 with the case and all the goodies, but it's got some fun stuff. Look at this. You can actually rotate the sensor to vertical mode. What does that mean? That means you can take videos or stills like this in that vertical position. And as we're all becoming more attached, if that's even possible, to our smart devices, you see a lot more companies and even on YouTube, a lot more applications for those vertical images and videos like you see here. I love the object sensing capabilities it has. It's essentially looking forward, downward, and even behind you, and it can even avoid objects, well, as you can see here. It's a great drone for the price point, especially with those big enhancements. One other thing, Max, it can do, can actually rotate that sensor up 60 degrees, which is a big deal if you're doing any inspections or anything like that. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Yeah, he's done it once again, it seems. I don't need a drone, but it makes me want one.
I'm in that same boat, Max. I want one after seeing that.
What would you do with it?
I don't know. I'd find something.
We just love technology. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. We do quite often visit with our friends who are farm broadcasters across the country because they are in the know, quite frankly. They follow what's going on in their communities, their regions, and they're very close to the farmers who listen to them. People like Brian Winnikins at Durand, Wisconsin. He's on AM, he's on FM, he's on streaming, he's all over the place. WRDN. Brian, thanks for joining us this weekend. What are you talking about on the air these days?
Turkey prices, for one, because of the avian influenza, which we do have outbreaks of here in western Wisconsin. They're USDA, and some folks are already looking at the grocery store going, whoa, $1.99 a pound? What happened there? So that's been one of the big things that not only farmers, but even consumers are kind of chatting about.
You know, every year it seems that, well, in normal times when we don't have challenges, disease challenges in the poultry industry, the big supermarkets very often will offer turkeys as a loss leader. You can buy one for almost next to nothing if you get the rest of your groceries there. It'll be interesting to see if maybe some of them will still offer some deals this year. I've heard that the fresh turkeys may be more of a challenge than buying your frozen turkey.
That's what we've heard too, and part of it is just because of the supply chain issue. Part of it is these recent avian influenza outbreaks. You know, there's been, again, a couple here in Wisconsin in St. Croix County and in Dunn County. And, you know, in northern Dunn County, you know, in Barron, they have the big Jennie-O plant there. So that could be affecting some of that too. So the fresh turkey side, yeah, there could be some shortages on that. Hopefully with the frozen ones, though, we won't have that because they've been able to build up some supply over the summer, you know, especially during the break between the spring and the fall here when that avian influenza seems to show up with the migration.
A few days ago, you were at World Dairy Expo watching the cows out on the black shavings this year, and visiting with folks in the industry. What was your takeaway, in short, from this year's World Dairy Expo?
There's still, there's a lot of concern about input costs. There was a lot of talk about that. There was a lot of talk about labor issues as well. A lot of dairy farmers, they're concerned about the immigrant labor or lack thereof, and how it could adversely affect their operations. And there was some concern about milk prices in the first quarter right now with some of the higher demand, especially for butter that we've been seeing. It's been really kind of supporting the prices, but there is a little concern after the holidays about what might be happening and what might be in store for that.
How is cheese demand? Is it holding up pretty well? I know that's crucial to the milk producers in your part of the country.
Yes, cheese demand is holding up pretty well, and it's just been one of those things. It seems like over the years, Max, and a lot of folks have seen this, in dairy consumption, fluid milk has been going down, but cheese consumption's been going up. And now in the last few years, we've added the butter consumption that is also starting to rise. And so the dairy farmers are a little bit more optimistic with the way the dairy industry is heading right now. And, we haven't really seen a lot of expansion this year. And part of that has been concerns over the input costs and what's going to happen, down the road here with prices and really with labor.
It's harvest time around you, has been for a few weeks. What are you hearing from the growers out there?
Pretty good yields. A lot of soybeans are starting to come off. On non-irrigated ground, we're seeing anywhere from 30 to 39 bushels an acre. Again, that's on non-irrigated ground. On irrigated ground or heavier soils, it's up into the 40s to near 50. There has been a lot of corn silage harvested. Some of the grain, corn for grain, that's probably going to be coming off here in the next few weeks as producers are going, you know what, I think I'm going to save a little money and not spend the money to dry it. I'm going to let Mother Nature do the drying for me.
Partly personal, as the late Paul Harvey would have said back in the day, it's been a privilege for me personally to be heard on your radio station. You have one of those stations. Well, I remember you talking about it before you acquired the property and then rebuilt that operation to bring it back onto the air. And it's been interesting to watch all of the hard work you've put into it and to see the effort that you exert every day to be a part of that community in which you operate the way good broadcasters should. But there aren't many of you around anymore, it seems.
There aren't, but there are. And sometimes I think the ones, there's a lot of folks that get missed over what they do every day in the community at hundreds and thousands of stations, a lot of them rural stations across the country. For me, it's always been a labor of love. I've always woke up early in the morning, so it's never really been much of a difference for me. I think eventually when I do retire, I don't know what I'm going to do because it's like I'm still going to get up early in the morning. Oh, well, now what?
Well, hey, you can't retire. You have to just keep going there, pal.
Well, no, I don't want to do that. I do want to stop and smell the roses a little bit, but it's never been anything of hard work, so to speak. As our friend Orion Samuelson always, said, I talk about everybody else's hard work every day.
Yeah, that's not such a hard job then when you put it in perspective, is it? Hey, thank you for everything you do and for our industry throughout farm broadcasting and for agriculture. Brian, it's great to have you on here with us. We appreciate it.
Great to be on again. And Max, thanks for everything that you do. And everybody loves the shows that we have on the air with you every day.
Take care. We'll see you along the way. Brian Winnigan's WRDN Radio. He's in Durand, Wisconsin. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. We'll check in with our agriculture meteorologist, Greg Solier, momentarily. One thing I want to know, Mike, is the opportunity to get some rain into the river system. We need it desperately right now because of the transportation problems.
We certainly do, Max. And you're not the only one wishing for that. I think growers all up and down the Mississippi are hoping for that exact same thing. This past week was huge. The Mississippi River at Memphis went below negative 10.8 feet, which is the record that was set during that devastating drought in 1988. We've now surpassed it. It's lower than it was, at least at Memphis, during that one time period.
And I think the records go back something like 140 years when you look at Memphis, New Madrid, some of those key river points along the Mississippi River. As we've talked in the past, you and I, that channel, even in normal times, is remarkably narrow and remarkably shallow. And you get into times like this, that captain up there trying to navigate the river has to be in contact with other captains of towboats whenever there's a problem developing out there. You can't afford to make an error. With all of that tonnage, you could get hung up easily. You could wipe out a bridge, which we've seen at times in the past.
Yes.
When you've got one of those errant barges. So they have to know their stuff.
They certainly do. And Max, you mentioned the cost. The cost is one of the most staggering factors of this whole slowdown on the Mississippi, because whenever there's a stoppage, all this barge traffic has to sit, and it just sits there burning diesel against the current. Heard from one barge operator who in a 12-hour shift had to sit, burned 2,647 gallons of diesel fuel, cost him 10 grand just to sit there parked on the river.
When that happens, in many instances, they have to tie up along the river too, depending on the nature of the channel. They'll tie up to a tree along the riverbank and then put the engines in reverse for that boat that is moving downstream. The captains do communicate. It's really interesting. And the experience that I had riding up there in the pilot house, you listen to the chatter back and forth, and some of it is idle chit-chat. Hey, Cappy, you know, how's the family? But then at the same time, they are talking about those navigational challenges. If we don't get some significant rain, we don't have nearly enough trucks, of course, to take up the slack. You can't put that many on the road. We don't have that many drivers, and the trains won't even come close to making up for the ability to move on the river system. We'll have to watch it closely.
We certainly will, Max. Will have an impact on our markets throughout this winter.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bioproven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bioproven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. Many of you see it every day as you're working in the field, those continued dry conditions, drought conditions. I want to ask this guy about that. Is there any shrinkage at all of that big, massive drought area in the heart of the country, Greg?
Not really. You know, we had some modest improvement over the summertime season. For example, into the Pacific Northwest, the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin, there were pockets weeks ago into parts of Montana, sections of the Western Corn Belt. Those improved areas basically have, well, in so many words, evaporated away here. A little better action on the maps and charts. It's going to take a while to get things back to where we need to be, really, in those river systems into the Mississippi Valley. Yeah, weeks to go, if not months to go. In any event, the latest weather system, and it's a pretty healthy one, making its way across the northern plains. Yes, livestock producers, there will be a shift from rain to windblown snow. We saw that downwind of the Great Lakes region farther east last week, but out through Big Sky, the Canadian Prairie, at least it's moisture, but plan accordingly for an early season type winter storm there. Cooler, drier air across the divide, the next weather system, scant moisture into the Pacific Northwest. So that system rides into the Canadian Prairie, another fast-moving disturbance. And again, jet stream winds are more west to east. They're not buckled. You get that big up and down motion of the jet stream. Yeah, the weather becomes active when it's more zonal, as we call it. Not much going on. So again, limited moisture as it applies to the Pacific Northwest here through the week ahead. Now, southwestern parts of the country, obviously the monsoon season is over with. Nothing in the tropics for now. So steady she goes into the valleys of California for cotton and rice harvest. A little weak weather system here. The southern end of that system coming through the northern plains will generate a couple of scattered showers across the central and south end of the winter wheat belt. No significant moisture. Maybe the higher peaks of the central and southern Rockies get a little bit of snow. We do get some milder Pacific air to work back in across the desert southwest. Temperatures still a bit below average here. Dry time again. South end of the winter wheat belt. Seasonal temperatures and weather across the valleys of California. So Max, mainly the Pacific Northwest, northern plains. That's where the action is so far this week.
The other day I was texting with Janelle and Brad Aust in southeast Kansas. That's one of those very dry areas. Janelle said it wasn't a bin buster this year. They're very much in the midst of harvest right now, but she said all things considered, it's not a terrible year.
Yeah, and emergence of the newly sown winter wheat fields at the same time, very much uneven. So we get some moisture probably here through Nebraska, maybe parts of Kansas. The bulk of it is rain shifting over to snow as you get to the Black Hills, up through around Bismarck, Mandan, and points on westward. Ahead of this weather system, kind of Mother Nature watching our backs on what has been an accelerated pace on the harvest, especially over the western through southern Corn Belt. Yeah, we get some showers, even a rumble of thunder, and pretty good coverages here for the first part of the week, west to east. Not a vanguard pattern shift, but some moisture to settle the dust, if you will. We get more milder Pacific air back into the plains. Another window of opportunity materializing across the eastern Corn Belt with a seasonal chill in the air, but warmer weather back west of the Missouri as the week wears on. Again, not much going on a widespread recurring basis, but we do get at least a couple of showers and thunderstorms into parts of the Ozarks, Oklahoma, Texas, coming off the frost and brief light freeze last week down through the Gulf Coast areas as well. So a pretty snappy trough moving through the southern sections of the country. Jet stream flattens out west to east. A couple of coastal showers down through Texas. Otherwise, pretty much cool, dry air, high pressure and control for the end part of the week onto the southern plains.
For the eastern part of the country where folks are still working in the fields, how do you see that?
Much better weather pattern from a temperature standpoint. And of course, last week, prolific lake snows into upper Michigan, the upper mid area of Michigan, 1 to 2 feet there. It's melting away in this mild influx of some wet weather west to east across the Corn Belt locales, replaced by high pressure for the eastern states late in the week. Dry time as well for much of the Corn Belt. So just a short break in outdoor work and harvest activities. We'll get back at it. The showers and thunderstorms much needed coming off the frost and freeze last week over the southeastern states. There are dry areas. The cleanup and recovery continues on. Central and South Florida back into high pressure, delightful outdoor work, and autumn weather later in the week across the southeastern states.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. We are looking for relief to come. Will it? As far as those rivers are concerned, the navigable waterways, we need to bring some moisture into the river system. Is it coming?
It's coming, but it's short term. You know, maybe enough to, as they say, settle the dust. Will ease some of the dryness and drought conditions on the drought side of things. But in order to get this system here to improve throughout the mid-Missouri and the mid and lower Mississippi Valley, you need this big upper air trough position kind of into the central and southern plain systems that will recur and repeat time after time over months and get runoff before we obviously get frost and freeze and snow going. This is just one weather system on the move, and yeah, there'll be some significant rains, maybe locally 2 or 3 inches here, half to an inch across much of the eastern and southern Corn Belt, but there's not much on a recurring basis after that. La Nina setups typically in wintertime keep the moisture here in the northern plains and over the eastern Corn Belt locales, so it does not look to be very optimistic. And in any event, some isolated moisture across the Pacific Northwest, good coverage over the southeastern states, and again, some brief harvest delays. Brief this week. We'll need it considering the pace.
November? It's hard to believe it's here. How will we come into the month of November from a temperature standpoint?
Not even including the Halloween holiday. Nothing too spooky. Temperatures back to pretty comfortable, if not mild. Eastern Corn Belt, a little trough across the plains, a bit of a cool off across the Pacific Northwest. Shapes up like this with moisture. Good news. Not systems that will repeat time after time. But again, while we have harvest delays, we have some modest drought improvement here with above average moisture much of the Corn Belt. Southeastern states, we're dry here too, and out across the northern Rockies and Pacific Northwest.
That warmth that you showed us, will it expand as we get into the week of November 7th?
Not necessarily. The systems are progressive. They are moving, so we kind of squeeze the warmth here. Yeah, there's some cold air. It's November across the Canadian Prairie, parts of the northern plains, but warmth once again returning across the western states. And you can see how the trough position is kind of moving a little bit to the east. So again, things are moving, not stagnant. And the same with the moisture pattern, primarily up to the north, southern Canadian Prairie, parts of Big Sky, Pacific Northwest. Some good news here, and maybe some brief harvest delays lingering eastern Corn Belt. Wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard is needed across the Carolinas, including Florida. Dry time for Texas and the Southwest.
For the week of November 14th, what's your forecast?
Nothing too wintry here. Pretty delightful weather pattern here. Easy on the power bill, the heating bill, I'm sure, across much of the northern and central plains and points on westward. Again, the last of that trough and cool air clear, moving into the eastern states, so pretty nice, I guess, for outdoor work in the last of harvest. Here's the moisture, plenty of opportunity across the Corn Belt, the Plains. Moisture, good news for the Pacific Northwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
You can still hear them at work out there, not just that hum of the grain dryer. You can hear the auger tractors at work. We'll show you more this weekend on Max's Tractor Shed. Brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You see pictures of those on the social media. Farmers show their store locks there in their shops because they've upgraded their shops when they bought those. You can do the same. Go to the website storelock.com. Yeah, the tractors are hard working out there. Decades after they were made, those old tractors on the augers, such as this one from Illinois. This is Jared's 1970 IH 826. And then Charles in northeast Missouri has this 1974 IH 1066. Good-looking tractor. In Ontario, Les has two JI case tractors there side by side. Now, the one on the right on the auger is a 2294. And then here's a white tractor. We don't show these too often. Ryan in Iowa has a 1982 white tractor. I think those two 135s back in the day, I think they called them the Field Boss, didn't they? You can see smoke coming out of there as it's augering. Chris in Iowa has the 1971 IH 1456. Look at that plume. It's working on the auger. And Nathan in Illinois has a 1963 IH 806. Those auger tractors doing their duty for agriculture today. Mark Stock has more equipment coming along. Let's see what he's offering at Big Iron.
Hello Max, our sale October the 26th features over 1,250 items. 130 of those items are owned by Dirt Road Windy Meadow LLC. Their retirement sale in Wheatland, Wyoming. Tyler and Nettie Dodge, they bought their ranch in 1981. They've got a 2017 Vermeer 605 end round baler, super sharp. They've got a 2015 JCB 260T compact track loader. They've got a New Holland H8060 windrower. It's a 2012 model with only 1,226 hours. Their 2017 New Holland T5 120 mechanical front tractor with a grapple fork. That tractor only has 1,972 hours. We've also got the Edwin Hafferty retirement sale out of Clyde, Kansas. They have 68 items, a John Deere 9500 combine, a John Deere 1560 no-till drill. They have a 1989 John Deere 4455 tractor, folks, that will sell as well. The Billy Ray Bratcher Estate sales in McPherson, Kansas. They've got 25 items, a John Deere 6220 two-wheel drive tractor, and the always dependable 1998 John Deere 7810 two-wheel drive with 4,609 hours. On the real estate side, Big Iron Realty and Sullivan Auctioneers will be conducting 95 different land auctions across the Midwest. If you're looking to add real estate to your portfolio or expand your farming operation, go to bigiron.com and sullivanauctioneers.com.
Well, it's that time of the week to meet another FFAer. This week, we're meeting Lashana Vogel. She served as the Wisconsin FFA reporter during the last school year, 2021 to 2022. She retired in June, but Lashana, what were some of the highlights of your year of service?
During my year of service, I was able to meet FFA members from across Wisconsin, presenting over 30 different school visits, along with 17 speeches across northeastern Wisconsin.
That is a busy schedule, Lashana. I understand you also created and put on some workshops for students. What were those about?
Yes, so my team and we put on what we called virtual training nights. So we explained all of the leadership development events along with a few career development events so FFA members could feel best prepared for competing in those as the competitions came up.
That is very cool. Lashana, in your FFA history, were contest competitions an important thing for you?
Of course they were. I have a lot of experience in a lot of different leadership development events, along with I had a very well-developed supervised agricultural experience throughout my time.
And what was your SAE?
So my SAEs were in two different areas. I had one in agricultural education where I taught 4K through 5th grade students about agriculture in their communities, along with my Ag Communications SAE. And in that one, I focused a lot on social media along with written work, and I even created an online video series.
Well, Lashana, you are now at University of Wisconsin River Falls. Do you plan to have a career in agriculture?
I do. Right now, I am studying agricultural marketing communications with a minor in ag business here. And my end goal is to work for an ag-based company and be in their marketing department.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly wish you the best of luck. Agriculture can always use smart young people moving into the industry. Thank you, LaShawna.
Thank you for having me.
Harvest seasons can change substantially from one to the next, and Mike, sometimes it can be a real load, as we've learned talking with friends.
It certainly can, and that's one of the neat things about social media in this environment is we get updates and we hear about stories coming from other places in the world of agriculture.
Oh yes, we appreciate that constant contact with growers, especially during the harvest season, whether it's through the telephone or maybe out there riding in the cab with grower friends of ours, and sometimes through the social media too. And many folks have had the chance to watch the harvest of a farmer in Minnesota this year. Jana Malchek joins us from near Redwood Falls, Minnesota. The Malchek family's had a very different growing season this year. Jana, thanks for being on here with us to talk a little bit about your farm. First of all, where are you in harvest? How far along are you and how are your yields?
Harvest is going very well, shockingly. Where the yields are looking good this year, much better than expected. And we're about, I would say, 2/3 of the way done. And things are rolling right along. We're doing well.
Those winds of winter will be howling before long. You like to get that crop in, I would imagine, before you get too far into November, I assume.
Absolutely, yes. The time is now, and we're trying to beat the winter for sure.
In the corn and soybean fields on your farm, you miss a very good companion this year. You lost your husband, Kevin, back at the winter time, a victim of COVID. He was 51 years old, and you've carried on this season. It hasn't been easy, I would assume.
No, it has not been easy. It's been very challenging. Yes, I did lose my husband to COVID in January, and he was the farmer. And we are carrying on his legacy, and it has been a pleasure to carry on my husband's legacy and continue the farm. And yes, it has also been very challenging, but we are pushing forward, and it's very important to me to keep the farm going.
It was interesting to see comments about Kevin. One person said his sense of humor filled the room. He was a farmer through and through, I think was another comment, but he had a great sense of humor from what we gathered reading about him.
Yes, Kev was a funny guy, and everybody loved him. He did fill the room, both with just his personality and his humor. He was an amazing man, and everybody loved Kev.
You went into the fields in spring and you planted the crops there, and did you have help doing it? What was the rallying around you that might have taken place there? We often see that in rural communities, especially this time of the year at harvest. Did you have some folks step forward to help you?
Yes, we did. First of all, we had a very wonderful employee, Luke, who has been working with us for 7 years, and he was taken under Kev's wing, and he learned the farm, and he was able to, with the help of myself and a couple other local farmers, we were able to go forward, and I really owe it all to Luke, and yes, surrounding farmers as well who pitched in and helped us out. But yeah, it's amazing. The farming community is amazing, and they do really come together, and we've had the help that we need to keep going.
And harvest season as well?
And harvest season, yes, we have a great crew, my dad included. I have a brother-in-law on the crew. And yeah, we have the help we need for harvest as well.
Jana, what have you learned from this year that you might share with others who have lost a spouse or have a significant illness in the family right now, and perhaps they're contemplating maybe having to go down the path that you have had to walk this year? What would you say to them?
Well, I think the most important thing is to know why you want to keep doing this. And obviously farmers, farming is in their blood, and continuing on his legacy is the most important part for me. And I learned that Kev didn't leave a mess. He was very organized and he had his ducks in a row, and without knowing, he left a farm that was pretty, not, I wouldn't say easy, but it made it a lot more manageable with the help of what Kev did setting up his farm over the years. And yes, going into an illness, there's no words. It was devastating and very difficult. And I just learned that I just have to keep going. I have to keep living, and the farm is really important to me.
So you're already planning for the 2023 season then?
Yes, absolutely. The 2023 season is on, and we will continue to move forward.
Very good, Jana. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We wish you the best as you continue on through the harvest to get it all wrapped up, put away in the bin, and to put those plans in place for next year. We certainly appreciate you sharing your story with us, and we'll keep you folks in our thoughts and prayers going into the holiday season ahead of us here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well, I would imagine many folks could concur with Jana. Where would they be without their family and their friends through these very difficult times? And many would say, and our faith, too.
That's a good point. It truly takes a team when things get hard, Max.
We've seen pictures in recent days of many of those community harvests. It happens every week somewhere, and it doesn't always get the attention, but it's one of those things that always makes you say, wow, this isn't such a bad place to be after all.
Yeah, really appreciate rural America and the ag community. Folks, thanks for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. We'll see you next week.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.